Hey, Stoney here with another game of Mechabellum, where we watch robots beating the crap out of other robots. This is a game from the Mini Tournament Americas. This is the championship game, and it's me up against Steelsane. And right off the bat, I am faced with a challenge provided by my opponent because of the phoenixes. Now, I do have a few sets of fangs, so I'm hoping that I will keep one of these sets alive so that the rest of the army destroy his ground army, and a set of fans will be alive to take care of the phoenixes. So I am going to position my fan in a way that they will survive after the initial engagement, so directly after the sledgehammers. My opponent decided to pick two arc lights, a smart move. They're very efficient at dealing with my fangs, and they're also their only chaff clear. Alright, so my fans and the rest of my army are engaging with my opponents, and you can see these late arriving fans coming in here. At some point, these arc lights are going to start locking onto my tanks while my fans are still being locked on the phoenixes, and that is the ideal situation because it takes forever for these arc lights to destroy my tanks. And it seemed to work out. As you can see, for both sides, I have a considerable amount of fans left to destroy the phoenixes. And that gives me an easy win on round 1. Excellent. Round 2, unit cards. Nope, just regular cards. Underground threat is interesting. It creates a problem that they have to be prepared for. And because I already have fans behind the tower, so I'm somewhat prepared for it already, I decided that the right hand side is a bit weak because of the left hand side they already have two sets of fans, and if you put them in the middle then you might run into these arc lights, so not an ideal situation for any other sides. So I put it on the right hand side. For my opponent, he also decided to go with underground threat, put his crawlers on this side. I have my crawlers positioned just in the back. However, I think I might lose this crawler fight as the underground threat produces, I think, almost 2 squads of crawlers where I only have 1 squad here to defend. Nevertheless, my crawlers are engaging at melee distance against the stone crawlers. But very unfortunately for me, these arc lights are just turned around and started shooting it just a little earlier than I expected. At the bottom corner there, we see fans attacking my tower, so they will get a debuff. It is not the most terrible debuff because the majority of my army is out of the range for these stone crawlers, and the ones that are in range are getting picked on anyways, so not a big deal. Hopefully I can take care of these fangs and crawlers. My army of fangs on the right hand side is picking up the phoenixes, but they will not, unfortunately, win this round for me because of these stone crawlers. But they'll do their darnest to clear out the rest of the map. Good job, fans. Can do this. Alright, so that is a round to my opponent, and that takes us to round 3. Round 3 unit cards. Sabertooth was my pick, but I think if I were to choose again, so Sabertooth makes a lot of sense. I think primarily the reason I wanted Sabertooth is because I am pretty fan heavy on my side. Wanted to take the Sabertooth, get Missile Interceptor, and eliminate the threat from these stone crawlers. The Fire Badgers and Vulcans, they aren't as effective for me because most of my opponent's units are slow and fans and attack at range, so I essentially have to run up to them. The Fortress is interesting, but at this stage of the game there isn't any big units for me to shoot at, so I think all things considered, the Sabertooth was the most reasonable choice. Alright, so for my opponent, I think he could also pick the Sabertooth because it adds a layer of damage for him. But instead he took the Fire Badgers because I do have 3 squads of crawlers. Okay. I added more crawlers just to setting up my board for the late game. And in the meantime, I am positioning my Sabertooth. The question is, am I going to take the anti-missile this turn? I think I will. I have 250 saved up. Unfortunately, I didn't. I can't remember if it was a mistake or because I was purposely saving up for something big. But either way, I don't think it was a good choice for me because the Stonecrawlers are simply doing too much damage to my units at all fronts. Now that I've seen there are 3 Stonecrawlers, I think the strategy is pretty clear. And no, I would not be going anti-missile on my Sabertooth because once my opponent starts spamming Stonecrawlers, then the Sabertooth becomes a fairly unreliable way. One is just because they die a little sooner than my alternative, but the other thing is that the anti-missile on Sabertooth isn't really that great. I think they can reliably defend one squad of Stonecrawler per Sabertooth. But once you get too many, even with an equal number of Sabertooth, you still have missiles kind of sneaking through. Alright, card round. Senior manufacturing is an option. I took senior manufacturing and boom, here's the big daddy, War Factory. I'm hoping my opponent will continue to put down Stonecrawlers because the more he uses, the more effect my missile interceptor will have on him. So I was essentially just hope that he will waste more money on Stonecrawlers because it works so well for the last couple rounds. I started selling my tanks because the War Factory is now filling the role of a bit of chaff clear as well as dealing damage to the Fire Badgers. Started adding Mustangs into my army composition. Mustang with War Factory is a very potent combination because the Mustang can provide chaff clear before the main army engages, and once the chaff is clear, the Mustang run forward because they have a lower firing distance, providing chaff for the War Factory, allowing the opponent's heavy units to shoot at the Mustangs instead of at my War Factory. Alright, didn't have enough money to get the anti-missile device, but that's okay because the War Factory can tank quite a bit. Unfortunately, the oil was ignited right there in the middle, so giving my opponents the chance to kill off my squad of Mustangs. On the left hand side, my crawlers broke through. Now they're engaging the Stonecrawlers, killing the Stonecrawlers, and of course, with so many fans left, I think these fans should be able to take care of these Phoenixes no problem. Now the question is, will they have enough to get rid of the Stonecrawlers before they obliterate pretty much the rest of my army? And it looks like the answer is no. So these crawlers will get killed, my Sabertooth will get killed, and these fans, just like from round 2, they're trying their hardest, but they're not going to be able to get the rest of the army. But that's okay. Can we get a Phoenix at least? Can we get a Phoenix? Ooh, it's going to be a close one. And on his last dying shot. Let's do this. Alright, cards. Orbital is an interesting card. My opponent has a lot of units that sits around not moving, so Orbital is going to be great against my opponent. Smoke is also a good card. More so on my opponent than it is for me. My opponent picked Orbital. I added another War Factory. And unfortunately, again, didn't have enough money to go with Launcher Overload. To go with, not Launcher Overload, to Missile Interceptor. But I did take a loan, and I was expecting some type of response from my opponent. So there's 3 ways to respond to a War Factory. You can either go with Acid Scorpions, you can go Melting Point, or you can have War Factories of your own. The latter 2, Melting Point and War Factories, can be directly countered by a launcher overload because my war factories are so close to the line, so they simply just walk up and boom, they're engaged in a fight. So right now, as you can see, with launcher overload, I was able to quickly dispatch my opponent's war factory, and 2 is better than 1. So with 2 war factories roaming around the map, it was able to clear out the rest of the map in no time. It's also worth noting that my opponent is cost control, which means his war factory is 13% weaker and deal 13% less damage. So in a mirror matchup, cost control really is at a disadvantage. And I think what they really need to do is to regain that tempo by causing as many problems on the other side of the board as they can, because it's very difficult for him to win the actual mirror match. Assault Scorpions, great card. If he has acid and he has range, that's going to be a huge benefit against my war factories. Electromag is also a great card because my war factories right now do run launcher overload. So I saw this card and I wanted to keep my war factory tempo going. First thing first, make sure I level the war factory. So level 2 war factory, twice the stats, half the price. And it will get in there and destroy his level 1 war factory, barely leveled. And I put shield bubbles on there, anticipating the electromag. It's a fair trade, 200 resources for the electromag and 200 for the 2 shield bubbles. And the shield bubbles will tank a few more damages, a few more shots from the war factory of his. My opponent went really hard in the middle here, so he's adding a underground threat now that is off cooldown. For me, I put my underground threat at the corner, hoping to distract the Stonecallers and also just clear out a few of the chaff at the bottom. My opponent decided to go with a head-on approach against my war factories. Not the biggest fan of that. Again, cost control. Sure, you have tower upgrades. I also have tower upgrades, but your cost control, so tower upgrades simply offsets your disadvantage, but it doesn't really give you anything new. With launcher overload, with a upgraded war factory, I have no fear of the 2 war factories at the front. I have no doubt that my war factories will ultimately prevail. As the battle rages on, I noticed that I have a bit of a chaff clearing problem. My war factory was shooting a lot at the chaff, even with launcher overload. So now knowing what the problem is, the next step is to find a solution on the next turn. It's a bit unfortunate this turn because I actually don't have anything that shoots up, so my war factory is just going to mop everything that's on the ground, and these 2 phoenixes are going to go around and hit my war factory. It is a level 2 war factory and these are level 1 phoenixes, so I'm actually not quite sure if he's going to get my war factory in time. And if he doesn't, well, I get to deal damage to his health bar. And no, could not get the beast down. Round 7. First, let's see the cards. Typhoon, excellent card. Great for chaff clearing. And I saw the high level Wraith. There is definitely a play with the high level Wraith, which my opponent took. High level Wraith with the field maintenance technology is very difficult to defend against. I took the Wraith myself, even though Typhoon was also an excellent choice. What I wanted to do is I wanted to bring in a few more sets of Mustangs. Mustangs are great with War Factory because they can serve as chaff clear as well as chaff of their own. I've added the melting point because aside from the melting point, there really isn't anything else that can kill a level 4 Wraith with field maintenance. Marksmen aren't going to do it. Phoenixes, even if they're at level 2, aren't going to do it unless you have 3 squads of them and they're continuously shooting at the Wraith. So really the only answer to that is melting point. But the melting point also serves another purpose, which is that once it's finished with the Wraith, it can just redirect its fire at one of his war factories, bringing down even quicker. Right now, both of my war factories are level 2, and none of my opponent's war factories are level 2, which means I have a huge tempo advantage, because very soon he won't be able to kill any of my war factories unless he starts to answer them with melting points. So I thought, why not get a head start on the melting point race as well? And let's see if it pays off. Luckily, my opponent chose the Wraith. My melting point is at the front, dealing with the chaff, and once the chaff is cleared, energy is redirected its fire at the Wraith, bringing it down in an efficient manner. As for the rest of my board, well, things seem to go well. Launcher Overload is really excellent at clearing out anything that's within range, whether it's a war factory or it's a pack of fangs. So what that allows me to do is to get in there, get the damage done, and of course destroy his war factories. Alright, so that will take us to the final round, or hopefully the final round, because this is a lot of damage and my opponent usually doesn't have a lot of health left. Okay, final round. Let's go look at the cards. Range Specialist is a great card to have in the final rounds. You have so many units on the board already. You have a ton of resources. Range Specialist is a pretty good card. Orbital Bombardment is also an excellent card. It helps both sides to clear out chaff. I think it's great for both players. Okay, so first let's see what cards do we pick. And as we're doing that, let's talk about the board. So far, I have been winning the War Factory War. I have a early melting point, which would definitely help out with any sort of melting point that he might want to introduce onto the board. My chaff, though, it is currently dying a little bit faster than his chaff, thanks to the high explosive Stonecrawlers. Now, it's been quite some time, so I think it's finally time to pick up the missile interceptor on these two war factories. This level 3 war factory can just defend on pretty much all Stonecrawlers on the board here. My opponent decided to add missile. That's not a problem, because with the launcher overload, it will intercept sentry missiles as well. So the game plan is, one, he is going to try to get some type of large units. He saw my melting point, so that might be the indicator that he might want to go with melting point of his own. If he goes for melting point, I do have a bit of a chaff problem in front of my war factory, so I want to make sure that's being rectified. My rest of the chaff problem is going to be fixed, because the primary chaff clear from my opponent's side, which is the Stormcrawlers, aren't able to do the damage it needs to do. The Fire Badgers, yes, they are chaff clear, but they also are very short ranged. And for the most part, the Fire Badgers are dying before they can even get to my units because of my war factories. My opponent decided to pick up 2 more melting points with range and energy absorption. So the idea is they want to lock onto a war factory, even though a war factory does a lot of damage. With energy absorption, it will hopefully out-heal the damage the war factory does. Well, let's see if it works out for my opponent. The Bombard did excellent for my opponent and clear out pretty much everything in the center, with the exception of the war factories. On the side, my units are still alive. The missiles are being intercepted if they fall into range. In the middle, my high-level war factories are winning the war here. Now it's just a matter of, can my war factory get to the melting points before they get a lock on to my war factories? Well, it seems that one of them did, and the other one, unfortunately, is being locked on. No matter. Got the tower, and the next unit on the list is going to be that melting point. Now, because he has energy absorption, I am not able to win in a mirror matchup, but this is a level 3 war factory with 20,000 damage per hit. One shot goes down the tower, and 2 more shots, and it's bye-bye melting point. And that is game. Okay, I'm very happy with the result of this tournament. I was able to win it, and this is my very first tourney win. So if you enjoyed this game, please subscribe this channel. I do post daily, and I hope to see you on the next one.